back in China. I was supposed to first teaching this in Xi'an, which is where the terracotta warriors are. And it was like our first meal. They had taken the teacher, like the school that I was supposed to work at, took me out with other teachers from the school. And I'm kind of healthy, so I see chili peppers on the plate, but they're like real chili peppers. They're not red pepper flakes. So I eat them because I'm like, oh, they're vegetables. And the next day, I had to run home because I thought I was going to die.
Welcome to the Where Have You Been podcast. I'm your host, Bill Ream, and each week on the pod, I have conversations with incredible guests from all walks of life. Expect to hear funny, crazy, emotional, life-changing, and even sometimes life-threatening stories and experiences that will entertain and inspire you. As always, I appreciate your likes, subscriptions, ratings, and reviews wherever you are listening. It doesn't sound like much, but it truly helps the pod get to the ears of more people who may enjoy it. And check out the website, whybpodcast.com, for links to the socials where you can find pictures from the guests and their stories, and also buy merch if you're so inclined. Now let's get to this week's episode. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another fantastic episode of the Where Have You Been podcast. And as always, I'm your host, Bill Ream. And as always, I say it every time, I've got another fantastic, incredible guest this week. This week I'm going to say it, and I don't mean this in a derogatory or whatever, I have another author, but not just an author, I have a spectacular, and I mean this, spectacular photographer. I want to say you should see some of her photography, but you absolutely can, and we'll tell you exactly how to do that in just a few minutes. I have Briana, I said that correctly, right?
Yes, you did.
Briana on the podcast today. And if you would be so kind, first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here. But if you would please let our listeners know, who are you?
My name is Briana Gervat, and I am, first and foremost, I always I appreciate the photography thing, but that's when words fail. So I'm an author, predominantly not a native English speaker, apparently. Um, and I am a poet and athlete. And I just recently published a book called There Will Come Soft Rains that chronicles my journey along the Western Front. And studying war has always been something that I've been fascinated with, and I've traveled the world in search of what comes after.
So when did that literally start as a child, like growing up through school and learning about things like that? It just had a fascination with you?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 1980. So I grew up at the end of the Cold War, and we watched Alvin and the Chipmunks. I know that sounds so trivial and whatever, but there were all that inspiring stuff about let the wall come down and wanting the Berlin Wall to fall and the Cold War to end. And then in fifth grade, my teacher, Mr. Henner, rolled in the television and we watched the Iraq War begin, the first invasion of Iraq. And so I think it was just almost like embedded in me, in my psyche, that war was everywhere. So it just was something that I just continued, and I fell in love with history, and I just kept on going with it.
Just out of curiosity, was there ever any part of you that was like, I feel like maybe I want to get into the military, or was it more of a fascination with like what happens during and after?
After September 11th, I definitely wanted to join the army. I was like, oh my God, I want to go. Not that I wanted to go and fight people in Iraq or Afghanistan. It wasn't that I wanted to go wage war, but I just felt like I felt a wave of patriotism, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna join the military. And also, I wanted to maybe go to West Point when I was in college, to go to college at West Point, but they didn't have a women's lacrosse team yet, so I did not go. So I think I was always inclined to join the military, but I don't have the personality for the military.
Okay. And you mentioned lacrosse. I have a soft spot in my heart for lacrosse. Both of my daughters played. So really
So cool.
watching the sport. Absolutely. Well, very, very cool. And we'll hear more about, your adventures with all of that stuff and whatever. Let me ask you, before we get too far into everything, where can people find you first and foremost? I know you have a website, you have some socials, if you don't mind sharing those.
Yeah, no, definitely. You can find me on Instagram under Briana Gervat. And then you can find me if you really want to get official. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. And then you can find my book on Amazon. And then if I'm not on the interwebs, I'm out there in the woods or at the beach.
Fantastic. Or as where you should probably be, where we all should be. Absolutely.
Yes.
So you had this fascination with war and what happens with that. When did you decide to make that into something more than just a fascination?
I think that like when I was younger, I had gone to college in Fredericksburg, Virginia. And that was, a major battle, not a major battle, but a battle of the Civil War in which the Confederates actually beat the Union Army. So it was interesting to be a Northerner down in Virginia and to have that awareness. And then after college, I traveled throughout Europe and I went to Dachau. I went to the concentration camp in Dachau and I just felt something so profound. And then also when I was a kid, I just remember like reading Anne Frank and when it would get cold out and I would think about what it would feel like to be in a war when it was that cold. So I
And
think that it was just always this this soul contract or something.
yeah, and so when your choice to go to Fredericksburg, I assume, was very like premeditated. Like it wasn't just this is a great school or whatever. This is I want to be there because it's there's history here.
No, 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 I didn't
Really?
even yeah. No, so my parents will tell this story. They drove me down to Fredericksburg to check out Mary Washington. A kid that I went to high school with that then became my best friend, had already gone there. They fell in love with it, not only the campus and the town, but the price point of it. And then I got recruited to play lacrosse, so it was a no-brainer for them. And I was like, "Whatever, I guess I just don't have a choice in the matter." So it was never, "Oh my gosh, there's so much history here." It was, "This is where we can afford for you to go and have fun."
Just a really great coincidence, I guess.
Yes, very much so.
Awesome. Awesome. So then let's kind of turn the story over a little bit to how did travel become a thing for you? Was that something that you were brought up with, or did it kind of come out of this fascination that you had?
Oh, no, my heart has always been everywhere else. Not that I don't like, I grew up in a town called Northport, which is on the North Shore of Long Island, and it's beautiful. It's on the beach. There's boats in the harbor. It's a really quaint fishing town, or it used to be. And so I always loved it here, but, I always also longed to be anywhere else.
But how did that start? Do you remember? Like, was it
Yeah.
reading or was it, watching shows and dreaming of travel or
No, it was definitely reading because I read a lot of books and my parents read to me before I could read. And then my dad would tell me all these stories about all the places he traveled when he was in the Merchant Marines. So, I was daddy's little girl. If my dad did something, I wanted to do it better.
nice, very nice. But did they take you on any travels at all? Even like family trips or anything like that when you were younger?
Oh, yeah, we would go skiing a lot. We would go like, we never did international travel until we were teenagers, and that was just one trip to England. But we would go skiing every year. We rented a house out on the east end of Long Island, and, my mom was always we drove everywhere. Like, it was never a thought of, "Oh, that's far away." Not that we did road trips across America, but it was just the thought of getting in a car and going somewhere was just second nature.
That's great. And there's there's some kids growing up that when you go on these trips, and granted, if you're going to do something that you really enjoy, that's one thing. But sometimes it's like, oh, ho hum, I don't. Gosh, we're doing this again. And so for those that really are attracted to it and love the idea of going on trips and whatever, just I think it's pretty awesome because it can really open up a whole world to people. And obviously it did for you in your life as you grew up as well. So so your first trip abroad was to England. That was a family trip to see just to see England, or was there more involved with that?
Yeah, I mean, my first trip abroad was to Canada. We went to Quebec and Montreal, but that I mean, like, you don't really count that because it's
Yeah,
for
we don't
work.
count that.
No, not that those cities are not beautiful and they're not like a place like something, but it's just like it's an 8-hour trip away. It's not like
Right.
it's not like this far away place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think my parents had wound up winning plane tickets to go to London.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and so they were like, "Oh, we should all go." England wouldn't have been my first choice as my first trip away, but we were away for the 4th of July, so it was so interesting. But we went to all of the castles, and we went to the Tower of London and Portobello Market. And it was a cool experience. And when we stood on Hyde Park Corner and listened to everybody talk about politics.
And so, even though that wouldn't have been your first choice, did you consider that sort of an aha? Like, okay, this, I need to continue to do this as I get older? Or was it just sort of it happened and travel just sort of happened after that as well? Even though you knew that you wanted to see the world from a young age, but when you finally did get to go overseas, did that sort of like really solidify it?
Yeah, definitely, because it was just, where's next? But also, since I was a little girl, since the time I was 5 or 6, I'd always dreamt of France. France was always the be all end all to me because I studied art history and my aunt would give me all these art books from the Met. Like every year the Met would put out poetry books with all the paintings in them, and my aunt gave that to me as a gift for Christmas. And that to me was, England was cool, but I could not wait to get to France.
And
France was
I,
the dream.
I have to assume, and well, I'm sure we'll get there. I have to assume you've been to France now since then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's where I walked to the Western Front.
Ah, yes. So let's do this. Let's transition right into the main part of what this podcast is. And I'll ask you, you can take this any way you'd like to. Brianna, where have you been?
Starting from the beginning or just recently?
Again, you can take this anyway. Some people will actually list every, like the most of the, the major places that they've been to, or we can just jump right in.
All right. So yeah, where have I been? After college, I did the whole backpacking through Europe. So some of my favorite places that I visited were Stary Smokovec in Slovakia, obviously Italy, since I'm an art historian. So going to Florence was just tops. Being in the Piazza della Signoria I just couldn't catch my breath because I was so blown away by everything. And then after I got back from Europe, my taste for travel it was unsatiable.
Mhm.
So I then traveled to China and taught English in a city named Guilin, which is in the Guangdong province. And that's south, that's just north of Laos, just northwest of the Canton and Hong Kong.
Okay.
And what's that?
Oh, I just said excellent.
Yeah, no, have you been to China yet?
No, I haven't. I have not been to Asia at all yet. So that's very high on my list.
It's so beautiful, and I was very lucky, so I got to go there when I was 23. So this is when you still had to go to internet cafes and you didn't have,
Mhm.
you weren't so connected. So I really got to experience the rawness, and you didn't have people were tourists, but it wasn't, they were in Beijing and stuff. I think I was probably one of the very few white people that was living in the city at the time. So it was very interesting to be that distant. It was really cool. And then after China, I went to Australia to coach lacrosse. And then I met a very, very handsome man. And he was from South Africa. And I just had it in my head that I had to marry him. So, yeah,
I hope he's your husband. Because
he was
otherwise
my
this could be awkward.
Bill, he was my husband. He was.
Okay, okay, okay.
But so I met him, and then before that, then I joined the Peace Corps, and they sent me to Jamaica. I wanted to go to South America so bad, like I wanted to go to Chile or Peru or anywhere they spoke, or Ecuador or Bolivia, somewhere. But they sent me to Jamaica, and I didn't stay very long in Jamaica because Jamaica was not. I didn't feel like it was the safest place to be a volunteer in the Peace Corps.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, yeah. I should have just gotten transferred, but again, I was young and naive and in love with a South African man.
Hmm.
And so then afterwards he came to New York, and then I wound up going to South Africa for a little while, and that was beautiful, and we went on safari and all over the place. But I was also young then too, so I didn't really appreciate the landscape and the scenery as much as I should have because I mean, they have you ever been to South Africa yet?
No, I haven't. There's so
Oh.
many places I haven't been.
I mean, honestly, Bill, there are so many places that even if you had all the money in the world, like, would you make it there? Would you be able to do it, you know?
Right. Well, then you say that, but then there's a young woman that I follow on YouTube who was the youngest woman in the world to ever travel to every country in the world, and I think she was in her early 20s when that happened. And like, how does that happen?
But I feel like I've seen she's the young black woman, right?
No, but there might be, maybe there's a controversy over who was youngest, but yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
think
just to even think to even be even in your upper 20s or early 30s to travel to every country is just insane.
yeah, and then how long are you there for? So are you just stepping foot? Are you just touching the ground and then just getting boots on the ground and then leaving? Are you spending time there? Because to have accomplished that, that's great. But, are you really experiencing it, which is totally different than actually traveling through those places and spending the time that is necessary to maybe get a hint of what those countries are like, you know?
Exactly, exactly. Well, let's do this. I know there's a lot more places you've been that since, besides what you've listed so far, because I know that was all, kind of younger you, I guess, in a way. But let's start with, if you don't mind, let's start with, like, of all of the places that you just mentioned, is there any like experiences or stories that you have from any of those places that you care to expand on that just were really maybe not necessarily life changing or whatever, but very important to you or anything like that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that China was so, I had written a book, my first book that I wrote, I had written this and it still remains the same. China haunted me because it was so far away and so foreign and so different than anything that I've ever experienced anywhere else in the world. So being there and teaching English and then in that beautiful landscape and seeing all the things that, go walking the Great Wall and going to the Forbidden City and then going to there's this reed flute cave that was in Guilin. It was just so I think that if I had been older, I would have stayed longer, but I think it was this combination of beautiful and jarring at the same time, where you travel somewhere and you want to experience everything that it has to offer, but then again, it was like culture shock every day.
What made you decide to go there over any other place in Asia, say? Was it the wall? Was that part of it, or
No, I mean, the wall is a cool thing, and that was another thing too, this was before the age of the internet. You had National Geographic, and you had those majestic photographs of what the wall looked like, but when you get there up close and you're climbing it, you realize you're in the mountains and that you're going they built this, and it was really cool. But I went to China because when I backpacked through Europe, I literally saw a sign that said, "Teach English in China." And I said, "All right, why not?"
have you found that sometimes it's almost like the world just kind of speaks to you and you just have to kind of listen? Just if you're open to it, like it can really bring you some really cool life experiences.
Oh, absolutely, and I think that, there's no such thing as coincidences, and there are signs everywhere. Yeah, I totally everything you just said, Bill, is everything that I believe in too, that if you keep your eyes open enough, then it will direct you in the direction you're meant to go.
So you went to China, you taught English. How long were you there, did you say?
6 months.
Okay. And did it get to a point when you were there, was it sort of like, did you plan on being there for 6 months, or were your travels and was your life sort of open ended?
It was open-ended at that time because I was, filling out my application for the Peace Corps that was gonna take at least a year for it to go through and the interview process to take place and stuff like that. So I just kind of was winging it. I had worked the summer before and saved enough money to get me over there and to tide me over while I was working. And I would have stayed longer. Like I said, if I was older, I might have stayed a little longer, but I was young and I wanted to, go to Australia and coach lacrosse. And that I think the universe guided me to do that too.
How did that come about, just out of curiosity?
My
Again, because
friends
there
were
wasn't
yeah,
really, like, you weren't on LinkedIn or on Facebook. Well, I don't know, was Facebook the thing? I don't know. But
no,
like,
not even. It wasn't Facebook wasn't a thing until what, 2006, 2007?
yeah, so you weren't on social media where they were like, "Hey, come to Australia," and
No. No, it was, my friends had been, they had traveled to England, so a lot of my friends, after they graduated, that the friends that I played lacrosse with or I knew from playing lacrosse, they had gone to England to coach over there, and I thought about doing that too, and my life probably would be completely different than it is now, but I had gotten in touch. I think that someone I knew this person or had gone to Australia, and connected me with a coach that was the director of the league that I would coach for. And she said, "We'd love to have you. Come on down."
Fantastic. Well, tell me about Australia.
Oh, did you ever? It has the best coffee in the world.
Okay. I don't know that I've heard that. That's wonderful.
No, I think that the Australians do coffee so well. So when I was in Europe, I met these two guys in Paris, and they were always like, "Oh, come visit us in Australia." So when the opportunity to coach lacrosse came up, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna be there." And they're like, "Oh yeah, come stay with us for a couple of days and then figure out a place to live, you know?" And so I had them when I first got there. And when I got to, so I flew into Melbourne, and then I found a job. And then one of the girls that I went to college with wound up being down there too, which was awesome. But I lived in a place called Caulfield, and I worked in the center of Melbourne for a couple of months, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. But then I was there at the tail end of summer, throughout the fall, and then it started to get cold. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be in Australia, I might as well go to the beach. And then I left, 'cause lacrosse season was over. So I took a bus north to Byron Bay and spent like my last month up there surfing, going to the beach, running to the lighthouse, being a bum, really.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's such a bum. But it also, gave you the taste of what that freedom was. And, once you get that freedom, you kind of want to cruise and be a bum for a while.
Yeah. But then that couldn't really happen because that when you ended up going into the Peace Corps?
Yeah, so I came back from Australia in June of 2004, and then I found out about the Peace Corps in 2000, early 2005, maybe January 2005, and then I left for the Peace Corps not just a few months later. But I only stayed in the Peace Corps for a couple of months because, again, it was just, do you ever hear the song "Welcome to Jamrock" by Ziggy Marley or one of the Marleys?
Maybe if I heard it, I might recognize it.
Yeah, basically the one of the main lines of the chorus is "Out on the streets, they call it murder."
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So going there, I was like, I'm not sure, not that I have a problem going to places that are dangerous, but it just to create a life there was maybe not what my heart had in mind.
Well, where did you go and what did you do?
So so in my early 20s, I worked construction and painted houses.
Wow.
So they basically were like, "Oh, you're going to join the Peace Corps and you're going to help us with infrastructure." And
Okay.
I'm like, I ripped roofs off and put new shingles on. It wasn't like this master carpenter that had the skills to be able to help you do your infrastructure in your country, you know? So again, I was naive and I was young and I was too not cowardly, but too not quiet either, but just not aware enough that if you speak up and say what's on your mind and address an issue, there's a resolution that there something else could come about, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, like you could have talked to somebody and maybe done something different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Where remind me, where were you in the Peace Corps?
So I was in a little town called Artis, which is about 2 hours by bus west of Kingston.
Oh, okay, okay, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, and then they were going to station me in Montego Bay, and and also I was, it was basically insinuated that if I was going to be in Montego Bay, I was always going to be regarded as a tourist. I would never be anything other than a tourist, not a Peace Corps volunteer, not anything else. And I just said, that's not the way I want to be in the Peace Corps. I want to live in, obviously I'm not Jamaican, but I wanted to live more of a authentic way and not just be regarded as just somebody else coming down to Jamaica on vacation.
Right. And I'm not familiar with much. I kind of understand the premise of the Peace Corps and everything, but so obviously when you sign up for the Peace Corps and you're accepted, you don't have to sign a contract or some sort of like you don't have to like quote unquote enlist for any length of time. Is that correct? It's a good.
So you're not being forced to stay there. So if you make a decision to leave, you can leave.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but I was, one of my good friend that I spoke about before, who I went to college with, he was in Burkina Faso, which is in Western Africa, and he stayed for the full length, and he met a girl there, and they've been married ever since. They've got 2 kids. There's people that go to these places and they really stay, and they have the stick to itiveness to
Yeah. So you're, and I feel like I'm making this more about you and your decisions than actually the travels and the stories. But
it.
I'm just very interested because I don't know. I like to pick people's brains and understand. So you decided to get out of the Peace Corps. Well, I mean, where did you go next, and what made you decide to go to wherever you went?
I went first. Well, that the man that would become my husband came to
Right.
visit New York. So
Okay,
we
that's right.
went
Because
back.
you met him. That's right. You met him while you were in the Peace Corps.
No, no, I met him when I was in Australia.
Oh, before you were in the Peace Corps.
Yeah, I met him in Australia while we were surfing. We go surfing together, and I was like, "Ooh, this is the love of my life. We go surfing together, and that's all that makes a good relationship."
Surfing and bumming. Hey.
Yeah, and he was a master carpenter, so that, he was actually a really good carpenter, unlike me. But yeah, so I met him, and we went back and forth to London, back and forth from New York to London a couple of times, and then he wound up back in South Africa. So I went to South Africa for a few months.
Okay. Was this makes no difference to this podcast at all. But
Well, let's just go with it anyway.
like, when you were in the Peace Corps, did he just go home, or he didn't go with you?
No, no, no. He's South African, so it's an American organization. So I don't even know if had been able to. But
Well, I didn't
we
know if he
were
just went like to the area and just stayed somewhere or something to be close to. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I don't know how that's
only there for 5 I was only there for 5 weeks, so it wasn't a long enough time for him to make a life-changing decision to move to Jamaica.
right. Right. Okay, that's fair. Just
Yeah,
I'll just skip this part of the podcast.
we could take it out.
No, I'll leave all my stupidity in. But
Great.
okay, so he went to New York for a while, and then you guys went to South Africa. How was South Africa?
South Africa was beautiful. It's such a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous country. The people there are fascinating. They're hard and soft at the same time. Like, they're so in love with life, but they're also very guarded. So it's just an interesting culture because there's so many different tribes, there's so many different histories, and we were in Cape Town, so I got to see Table Mountain every single day. So when I go on a run in the morning and go down to the beach, there it's the view right there. And the food is delicious. There's all these meats and this incredible wine, and just they have these things called braais that, you just go to someone's it's a barbecue, but they call it a braai.
Wonderful.
So
So you go to someone's house. Tell me more. I'm interested.
oh, yeah. Yeah, so, instead of saying, "Hey, you wanna come over for drinks and some food?" It's like, "Oh, we're having a braai." So they would smoke meats, but not in the way that Americans smoke meats. Like, you're talking just all different kinds of meats that you would find in South Africa. And then, obviously they drink beers, and you get introduced to different kinds of music and just different ways of looking at the world. So it was difficult because, again, I was far away from my family, and I was with him, but it was a cool experience, but it wasn't easy, you know? Like, because I didn't have a visa to work and all that other stuff. So the not the incidentals, the nuts and bolts weren't there like they should have been.
Okay. Okay. So, and I imagine these breeds to be like, when you're talking about it, you're not talking like, oh, there's 4 or 5 of us hanging out having a meal. I feel like it's a larger gathering.
It really depends on the day, like
Oh,
they
really? Okay.
yeah, so it could be just close immediate family or close friends or whatever, but also what the South Africans do, which is really cool too. So being in Cape Town, and I'm sure they do this other places too, but you don't go to happy hour, you go get a sundowner. So when the
Okay.
sun sets, you go get a drink
Oh, interesting.
and watch the sunset, which is really cool.
That's very cool, actually. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a cool thing to sort of, I guess, celebrate and just kind of like wind down from your day.
Yeah, no, totally. It's a cultural thing, and so it's a cool way of doing it. It's a cool way of approaching the end of the day.
Excellent. So before we move on from South Africa, is there anything else like from South Africa? Any like stories or experiences that you feel like you wanted to share from there, or would you like to move on to somewhere else?
No, I mean, it was just, I'd read a lot of Hemingway when I was a kid, so I just felt very, going to the big game farms and then seeing a cheetah run really fast. It was so innocently beautiful, you know? But
Amazing.
then South Africa has such tragic history too. So I think that being there and experiencing that and seeing the um the townships and seeing how there's a lot how people live was really difficult as well, because it was just so different than my experience. And so it was again, it was a reckoning, and how do you reconcile it?
Yeah. Well, so how was it like? I mean, obviously, we're living in a very advanced society in a very advanced world here in the US, but so tell me like some of the major differences.
Just in terms of danger, you always never like, no, I don't wanna say this because it was so long ago, it might have changed a little bit. It's
Hmm.
just that you're always on edge. You always have to be more so your head on a swivel than you would in other places that you travel to, because you are in more danger in some ways, and so that was strange to experience.
Because of like tribal things or
Yeah, not just tribal things, but, because of the way that, you're still experiencing the idea of, it's post-apartheid South Africa. Apartheid had only ended a decade before that. So
right.
you're still experiencing the waves of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't even thinking about that. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I think that also, like, being there and then understanding, like, okay, I had this, you know, my childhood wasn't perfect by any means, but it was still really special, and to know that my ex-husband grew up in a world that was completely different than me, and it was
Mhm.
different than even people growing up during when there was segregation here. So you still feel it. You get that ache for this mourning, this grief, for you still see it in people's eyes?
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be difficult, I guess, because I mean, in a way, like, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, but not in this necessarily this specific, reason, I guess, but we've talked about it in different areas where people grow up and have their cultures are what they are, but if that's what they know and that's what they've experienced, sometimes it's not. To us, it's like, wow, this is so unfortunate, and absolutely, it's so unfortunate. And I don't mean to take anything away from it, but they've lived through it and they're going through it in their own way. And sometimes like I don't know, our feelings of guilt or whatever for them is, you know, like they don't need that. Like they're kind of working through it in their own way. And I don't know how if I'm not expressing myself very clearly, I don't think, but
No, I get what you're saying.
it's just we don't
It's hard for
we
us
can
to.
we can view it from the outside, but we don't understand what they're actually feeling.
No, no, and, it's a hard life. It was a hard life across the board. And so, some of the stories that he would tell me, it just was mind-boggling to me. I'm like, "How are you still able to function in any way, shape, or form, having witnessed what you've witnessed or seen what you've seen or experienced what you experienced?" It was so different than the life I had lived.
Right. Yeah, that makes total sense. Wow. So, okay, and I don't, man, I feel like we should spend more time there. But so you stayed there for a short amount of time, relatively, right?
Yeah, about 3 months.
Yeah. And then did you guys leave together then? Because you'd already come to the States and then gone back there, right?
Yes. So I had left because I was like, okay, I wanted, and also like I wanted to travel more, and I wanted to figure out what I was going to do with my life. And I left because I also needed to make money. I couldn't not work for that long period of time,
Right.
in an ideal world, but that's not the way life works out. So I'm a hard worker. So I wanted to figure out what was next. So I came back to New York, and then he came a few months later, a few weeks later, a couple months later,
Hmm.
and then we stayed here for a couple years.
Okay. And in the meantime, did the two of you travel at all? Or did you basically just kind of not hunker down, but, get a job, do some work and
No, I mean, I got a job. That's when I started really getting into fitness. That's when I became a fitness instructor.
Okay.
And I really, really, really loved it. It was just such a, and I still love it because I've gotten back to it now. But it was just something that it was something else. You know, you talked about at the beginning of the podcast how when you travel, you're called to certain places. I just feel like I was called to be a fitness instructor.
That's fantastic. So you're back into fitness. Are you into fitness instructing?
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
get to I get to tell people to lift heavy weights and work hard, and then use my history to be like, this is a dictatorship, not a democracy.
Very nice. Well played.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so then I did that, and in the meantime, got it in my head that I need to learn Thai yoga massage
Okay.
because went hand in hand with fitness. Being able to do Thai yoga massage was an
Hmm.
extension of yoga and Pilates and stuff. So I went to Thailand and I spent a month there, and then I went to Cambodia afterwards, which was, where I, visited the killing fields and went to Phnom Penh and had delicious food and just got a taste for Southeast Asia because Southeast Asia is so different than China. It's just it's a different feeling.
Hmm. So I'm gonna do something to throw a wrench into this. I'm gonna ask you for a specific. So you've been to so many places that have so much history and so much impact on change throughout the world, whether it was because of a war or whatever has happened. What's the most impactful of all of the places that you have been in the world to you?
Um, Aside from the Western Front that I came back from a few years ago, Rwanda.
Okay.
Rwanda was a very, very, very eye-opening experience. Rwanda was tough.
Tell me more.
Well, because I study war and I travel with those kinds of intentions and with purpose. Had after I After my ex-husband and I became when he became my ex-husband, I went to graduate school in Savannah, Georgia, and studied my thesis on the Rwandan genocide. And I was one of those things that if I was going to study it for so long and write about it so fervently, I have to go. So after I graduated from grad school, I traveled to the heart of Africa and volunteered to teach yoga at this place for they were Rwandan cyclists.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was this there was a cycling team that this man named Jacques went to Rwanda and built this team because they got like all these like Rwanda is almost the perfect place to go cycling because of all the hills and the scenery and everything else like that. But they had fixed wheel bikes and you would see people ride bikes all over the place, but it was almost like used as a way of healing after the genocide.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So all of these young men who lost their families or had to go to neighboring countries or survived the genocide in one way or another, then became part of Team Rwanda and participated in races, cycling in other parts of Africa or in Italy or other places as well.
That's very interesting. And the fact that somehow you wound up being like a part of the team in a way, like just really, really incredible.
Well, when you research, you can learn all these things. So, you can't read about Rwanda without watching Hotel Rwanda or the movie with Idris Elba, which is called Sometimes in April. But then when you're reading all this and you're seeing all this and it's so sad, you look for stories of hope too. And that was one of them. And so I shot my shot. No, I should shoot my, whatever. I took my shot and I sent an email to the director of the Team Rwanda cycling. And she's like, yeah, well, we'd love to host you.
That's incredible. Before I forget, Hotel Rwanda was an incredible movie. What was the other one you mentioned? I don't want to forget.
Sometimes in April.
Okay. I'll have to check that out.
It is honestly, so it is this Tutsi man is married to a Hutu woman and his brother, I'm sorry, this Hutu man is married to a Tutsi woman and his brother is a radio DJ, not a radio DJ. He's on the radio and he incites people to violence.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And so he has to reckon that I think that he winds up losing his wife. He couldn't save his wife's life, and his brother is to blame, and his brother is on trial during at the after the genocide, and he has to what is that called? He has to go against his brother
Oh
because
my
of what
gosh.
he did. Yeah, it's an awfully terrible, horrible movie, but it's
Mhm.
worth watching.
Yeah. Very deep and I'm sure very like emotional.
Very much so. Very much so.
So we definitely have to get to your massive trek, which was such a huge defining part of your life. Before we get to your travels on the Western Front, is there anything between that point and when you did that you absolutely have to hit on? Because I feel like we'll probably spend a good amount of time on that journey.
I mean, there were like it's like Jesus, the missing years.
Right.
I mean, after Rwanda, I came home and then I was called again to go on a pilgrimage. And then I wound up like the precursor to me walking the Western Front was that I walked 500 miles across the Camino del Norte, which is in the north of Spain.
Mm-hmm.
And so, when we get into why I walked the Western Front, I was like, well, I already walked 500 miles across the north of Spain. How hard could it be?
Right. Please, is there can you expand at all on your travels? So, I mean, I don't know if I've talked to anyone who's walked that specific, I don't know, not trail, but you know what I mean, what I'm trying to say. But I've talked to people who have done a variation of that, and I've just heard some incredibly impactful, whether it's meeting people that you're walking with, even if it's just for a few moments or a day, or hearing their stories and just some really incredible things. Anything like that you have from your walk?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had such incredible encounters with so many wonderful people. And not only that, but you're in Spain, so you're eating such good food as well. And then you're seeing these beautiful vistas. You're going from the border of France and Spain through País Basco, which is Basque country. And so you go to San Sebastian and Bilbao, and then you keep on going to Santander and like all these other beautiful cool little cities in the north of Spain, and you're just like, I didn't realize that, you fall in love with Spain because 'cause you're like, I never thought that it could be just this beautiful.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so and then I met some really good friends, and I had some really incredible conversations, and towards the end, the first week, you kind of figure out your pace and the rhythm of everything. And then the second week, you kinda, know who you wanna interact with and what kind of experience you wanna have. And then by the third week, you're like, "Oh, these are my ride or dies. These are people that you fall in love with as friends, and they stay that way for your life."
That's incredible. And so so you met people on you actually finished walking it together then?
Not entirely together, we all showed up in the square together,
Mm-hmm.
and then we wound up spending a night in like a hostel or something, and then we parted ways in the day like, everybody went their separate ways in the days to come.
Yeah. Was your experience, I mean, I don't want to say was it worth it, because I think for everyone it's worth it in their own way. But like, what does that mean to you? Like that, having completed that?
It was just such a it was so again, China haunted me, but I think that when I look back at the Camino del Norte, I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was watching the sunrise every single day, and I was walking through a beautiful landscape with beautiful people. So it was something that I return to and I remember. And, I can close my eyes and remember a specific day, and I can remember what it smelled like and what it felt like, and what um what the air was like. And it stays with you. When you travel like that, it creeps inside of you, and it doesn't let go.
Do you remember having any points during that were like really challenging?
Yeah, when you get blisters and you're just like, why does the skin do this? It's protecting you and stuff. So yeah, there are those moments for sure. There was a lot of blisters, and other challenging parts were a lot of tarmac. So when you're walking and you go from terrain that is easier to walk on to not easy to walk on, it was more difficult. But I think it was just so beautiful, and it was so challenging physically that I was like, I wanna keep on going, like, I don't wanna stop.
Yeah. Excellent. How long did that take you?
A month, 30 days.
Okay. Excellent. Very, very cool. Well, let's segue over to your grand. I mean, I don't want to say it that way, but to yeah, like this journey that you've written about, and tell our listeners what you did and why you did it.
Oh gosh, yeah, you know what? I get what you're saying. I would still call it a grand adventure though, because it was an adventure.
Yeah.
In a way, not like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure where they go back and get like Nicodemus and Napoleon. But I mean that would be cool. But Napoleon was there, so in more ways than one. But so in 2022, I got it in my little head that I should walk across the western front of France from the border of the Franco-Swiss border to the North Sea, which is a 500-mile journey through the devastating landscape of World War One.
So, and I'm gonna interject real quick. Was this something that you had maybe read about other people doing, or did you kind of come up with this yourself? How did that part happen?
So I came about it because I came across a comment by the Western Front Way, which was an organization that was came about to get people to travel to the Western Front and walk this path of peace.
Oh, awesome. Very cool.
Yeah. So I didn't, it didn't occur until I saw that that was something. It never occurred to me that, oh my gosh, yeah, like it wasn't a thought in my head. I thought maybe I would like to go to Verdun or see, certain places in France, but it didn't occur to me that I would walk 500 miles through across the Western Front.
So at this point, thankfully, we do have internet and we do have all of these different resources at our fingertips. I'm assuming that's probably how you discovered this.
Yeah, no, I was on the internet when I discovered the Western Front
Yeah,
Way.
yeah.
And then I couldn't get it out of my head. It was just I saw that there was a possibility, and it was at the end of COVID, and I think France was one of the first countries to really begin to open up. And so it was fate. It was the meeting of star-crossed.
I was just gonna say sounds like it was the perfect thing for you.
Yeah. Yeah, there was no doubt in my head that I was gonna do it, and when I first contacted, the woman that was one of the directors of the CFO of the Western Front Way, she's like, "Oh, do you think you can put it off for another year? It's not marked." And stubborn that I am, I was like, "No, I need to go now." And, I was gonna go no matter what. So
Did this exist pre I mean, obviously the land existed, but this sort of kind of arranged path or trail or whatever, how we want to say it, was that exist in existence prior, or did they start this in like 2022?
no, no, it wasn't started in 2022. So in 1915, a lieutenant in the British Army wrote a letter to his professor saying that his dream, he was fighting on the Western Front, and he said in the letter, "My dream is to have this war path one day be a path of peace where men, women, and children can come and make a pilgrimage and find, and honor what we are doing here." And so that letter was written, it was 1915, I think. And then the man who wrote it, Alexander Gillespie, wound up dying a few weeks later in the First Battle of the Louse.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So then years pass, and this letter was found. I think it was found in 2015, 2016, maybe even a little earlier. And it was around the centennial of the Great War, the beginning of the Great War. And people said, we have to do this. We have to create this path of peace on the Western Front.
So they kind of started working on that, and it was. I'm just trying to kind of wrap my head around, like, because she said it wasn't clearly marked yet, so it was almost like they were nearing completion of it, and they were
They were
starting to
working on
get
it.
out there.
It was difficult because, it's World War One. It's a world war.
Mm-hmm.
You're not only in France, but you're dealing with other countries who, if there's an American cemetery there, there's British cemeteries, there's land that has become American or English because of the war. And if you read in Flanders Field, there's some small part of France that's always England. That's not even how the poem goes, so I apologize if I offend anybody, because that's not the poem.
It's
But
information.
yeah, yeah, it's information. Take with it, take it how you will. But they had to deal with a lot of bureaucracy and whether people wanted to have more memorials to it, if it was something that was going to be viable or if it was economically sound and worth investing in. So a lot of moving parts went into it, so it just wasn't, and also it is overshadowed by the Second World War. So, people you can go to the Western Front, you can go to a lot of the major battlefields, but, the thought of walking from one to another is, it's crazy.
So is it safe to say that you were one of the first people to truly do this pilgrimage, for lack of a better term?
I think that I could be one of the first women to do it. I really haven't done any further research because at the end of the day, I didn't do it for glory and honor and fame, you know what I mean? Like, I
Of
did it
course.
because, but before, so when I first found out about it, when I first looked into the Western Front Way, the people that were organizing the Western Front Way were doing a relay across it, and people have cycled across it. They're like, I think after the war, there was a group of soldiers that had fought in the war or knew people that fought in the war, and they had cycled through the Western Front. I think there was a race, like a race across the Western Front. So yeah, I think it was always something that people wanted to remember, but I think it was just something that saw a revival at the centennial.
Okay. So you make the decision. You tell the lady, "Nope, I'm not waiting. I'm on my way. Basically, I'm going to be there. I'm going to do this." Walk me through. Walk. Huh, you're walking. Walk me through with as much detail as you possibly want to give us. We have as much time as you'd like to talk about this, and I don't want to necessarily, like, obviously, tell every story that's in the book, because I want people to buy your book and read about it. But as much as you're willing to share, and again, we're all yours.
Yeah, so I decided in April that I was gonna go walk the Western Front, and I was on a plane in August, and I flew into Switzerland and took a small train to the border town of Bombfall, which is just right over where Kilometer Zero is. So then as soon as I got off the train, you're in the middle of nowhere. There's like a little shop where I get some fruit, maybe some water, and set off in the direction of Kilometer Zero and, find you know, what could possibly be the line of the Western Front. And I had a GPS, so I was very lucky when I did finally contact the people from the Western Front Way. They allowed me, access to their GPS that they were working on, so I could follow where I was to go.
Oh, that's very cool. That's
Yeah, it worked out well, otherwise I'd still be walking because I would be lost.
take a left. Wait a minute.
Yeah, and then I'd just wind up in, like, the Riviera, the French Riviera or Paris, and then just be like, "Yeah, I'll have an Aperol Spritz and a cigarette, I don't care."
Is there a beach? I'm good.
Yeah, yeah. If there's a beach, that's all I need.
Right.
So, yeah, so then I just, I got to the beginning of the Western Front and took a deep breath and said, "Holy moly, I'm actually doing this. I'm actually everything that I've thought about for the last few months is coming true, and I have to do it now, and I can't turn back."
And so you set out again. You're by yourself. I mean, you have a cell phone, right?
No, not really. I took my SIM card out, so I didn't have a cell phone. I had a phone
Okay.
that was not really, I didn't have internet access or anything. I just had a
You had
GPS system that
emergency. You could contact somebody, but otherwise, yeah.
I don't even know if I could have, to be honest with you, because there were times that, you know, I put a SIM card on my phone or I looked at something and it was just there was not there even if I did have an emergency, I don't know if anybody would have found me, you know?
Wow. So spoiler alert: we didn't have any emergencies,
Yes, yeah. I made it.
which is wonderful. Which is wonderful. So how is it? This is morning. This is midday. How are you? Where are you sleeping at night? What's your plan for this?
Winging it. No, I'm just kidding. I so it was so I got to Bonfall and I crossed the Swiss French border around noon, maybe just a little after noon. and I just had an idea that I wanted to get, like, somewhere near, the city of Altkirk, which is in Alsace, and I just walked and I walked and I walked and I followed the trail, and I, just had faith that it was leading me in the right direction, and I wound up walking, like, 16 miles that day, and, you pass these small towns, and the first small town that I walked through, I saw a, cross for the soldiers that died in that from that town in World War One.
And so right
And
away, like right away, you're getting a taste of what this is about.
exactly. Right away. There's no avoiding it. There's no running away from it. And pretty soon after, before I see a bunker, concrete structures, everything that still remind you that there was a war. And so you're in it now. There's no getting out of it.
Incredible.
And so I just kept on walking and, part of it was, what's next? What am I going to see? What am I going to come across? So that lets you, and also you're in a beautiful landscape in the foothills of the Jura, which are, an extension of the Alps, and you get into the Vosges Mountains, which are similar to the Appalachian Mountains. And
Okay.
that's where I began. Yeah, that's where I began in the mountains. And my first day, I camped out. I didn't even camp out. It was so warm. And I found this little hut, not a hut, but like there was this little pond that they would go like carp fishing or whatever.
Hmm.
And so there was little, not houses, but maybe they have
Lean-tos
one
or something?
room. What's that?
I was gonna say like a lean-to or something, but okay, okay.
No,
When you say a little shed.
yeah, it was like a bigger shed, and I'm sure there might have been, like, maybe a bathroom inside, but the door was locked. But there was a covering of what you could imagine like a workspace or a picnic area.
Okay, okay.
So I was there and I was like, "Oh, you know what? I will sleep here for the night."
I assume you had maybe like a sleeping bag at least.
Yeah, no, I had a sleeping bag, I had a tent.
Okay,
I had a sleeping bag, a tent, everything that I needed to set myself up for the night.
excellent.
Yeah.
So nothing happens first night. Good. You brought along. You said you stopped at a little store, maybe grabbed a few things that you might need. You're rationing water, I assume.
I wish I was rationing water, but there was really like I did ration water, but I thought I would encounter more water. I thought there would be more fountains, like, but there wasn't.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so that put a wrench in the works.
So it's not that you had no challenges. You just never had an emergency.
No, 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 it was yeah, I never put myself in danger in that capacity either, you know?
Right. How many? I don't mean to skip ahead in like this is the very early part of your journey. Which how long did it last?
36 days.
Okay. Wow. Even longer than Camino. So
Yeah.
what? How? Tell me about like. Did you meet people on this journey? How, like what kind of encounters did you have with other folks? And if you did, like, how's language barrier? I don't even know what languages you speak, but
I can get by in French, so I was very, very lucky. Like I could speak enough French to be able to communicate with people and explain what I was doing and ask for help if I needed it and order food. And then once you get into the days, it becomes easier because then you learn, when you go out to eat, that what people are saying to you. When you have those everyday occurrences,
mhm.
how people are reacting to you and what they're trying to say. So you pick up on words a lot more and be like, "Oh, that's the way you say it, okay."
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that happens if you're open to that when you travel just about anywhere. Like, even if you, like, I've been to many countries I didn't know the language at all. And you pick up on some things like, even if you know hello, goodbye, whatever, you pick up on some slang and things like that. And you start to get it if you're there for even a few days. That's awesome. And I love that feeling of, I feel like, okay, now I'm a little bit more like fitting in because I can at least use the words that they're using.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're more welcome in that capacity too.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's, and I've talked about this before too, like people who come to the United States and come into our towns and cities, and you can tell that they're foreigners because of, their speech, and you can tell they're not native English speakers. Just the effort. It goes a long way.
Yeah, no, I think that the effort makes a huge difference. I feel like if you're out there and you're trying, it's appreciated.
Yep. Absolutely. So tell me, and you don't have to walk us through the entire journey, obviously, because I'm sure there was a lot of, just hey, I'm just walking, and yeah, it's beautiful, and but any sort of like experiences that stand out to you as like really, really meaningful to you, or just really cool, or whatever, however you'd like to share along this journey.
I mean, I think that just camping out along the Western Front was just an experience in itself. Walking along that, like, with the intention of finding a path, like being on a path of peace. I think that in itself was so big for me, was so important. But then there were days that just you that were even greater because you were sitting there and talking to people or eating these delicious meals. I mean, I'm in France. So one of my first meals was in a city called Munster. And you go and they have this flamencouche, which is like a tart flambe, which is like a flat bread. And then they have, instead of champagne, they have Clément. So you have all this, like, you're just so your senses are assaulted in so many good ways and so many bad ways. So I think that every day had something special to it. There was some days that stood out, especially when I went to, like, cathedrals and, when it didn't rain, because it rained a lot. So the days that it wasn't raining, those were, but also the rain stood out too because I was like, "Is it ever gonna end?"
Right. Can you tell us any specific interactions that you had with anyone that you remember in any detail?
Oh yeah, I mean there was, in so many there were so many great interactions. When I got to the armistice carriage, which was where they signed the armistice on November 11th, 1918. There is this man who was just slightly older than me, maybe like late 40s, or like probably late 40s. And he rolled in, and he's so French, so Parisian, but he loves history. And he starts talking to me, and he hears that I'm American, and then he's like, "Nope, we're speaking French. You're in my country." And then we just sit there and talk about war. And then he starts talking about wine. And then he's like, in French, as he's sucking down a cigarette, he's like, "It's crazy what you're doing." And I'm like, "Cool guy." But it was just but it was like, it was these kinds of, this was at 9 o'clock in the morning, and we're just having this conversation about the world and war and food and wine and France. And it wasn't surprising. It didn't shock me. It was just part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I have found some of the coolest interactions, again, just going back to just letting things happen. And I think some of those are some of the coolest memories that I have. One of my favorites that I have, not to jump in here, but I was in Santorini, and my wife at the time and I we were staying in Ia at the tip of Santorini, and there's obviously it's a caldera and there's multiple, islands, whatever. And so most people stay on the main island there, and we took a little ferry boat across to, I can't remember the name of the other one that was across the way. It's in there somewhere. But it was almost nothing there. Like there was some homes, some farmland, whatever, and we just decided to walk it because it was not very big. So we decided to walk as much as we could of it, and we just happened to stumble upon, this was first thing in the morning, stumbled upon this little cafe which was not open yet, but there was a woman out there cleaning the tables off and stuff, like getting ready. And we somehow communicated that, if they would be so kind, we would love to have a coffee, whatever. And so if they didn't want us to, we would have left. And then this man came out, who obviously was the owner, probably lived there, and sat down with us. And we did not speak a lick of Greek. And somehow we sat and had a conversation for like 20 minutes.
I love that. That's so cool.
And I have no idea how, because obviously, again, like we had the communication boundary was massive. And yet, for some reason, it was still one of the most memorable experiences that I have, just sitting there and having this conversation with this wonderful man who did serve us coffee. And we just sat and looked out at this beautiful caldera as the sun was rising. And it was just incredible.
Mm, I love that for you. That's a forever memory.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things, again, like you didn't have to have a conversation with this man in this place. Like you could have just seen what you wanted to see and moved on. And you allowed that to happen. So I love it.
Yeah. No, I think that he would have made me talk to him anyway. I think he would have been like, "Nope, we're here. It's just the two of us. You're
Yeah.
stuck with me." you
That's
know?
funny.
But yeah, no, it was I think it yeah, like you said, if you just open yourself up for it, you can have and even if you don't talk, you still have a profound experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So you continued on from there. Tell me about the rest of the trip and what was the culmination like when you finally got there?
So the rest of the trip, it was battlefield after battlefield and cemetery after cemetery, and it was just so tragic. You know, you just keep on walking through mile after mile after mile of war, and there's no avoiding it. You know, you have to travel a couple of miles to the west or the east to get away from it, and even then, you wouldn't. So that was a hard part of it, but then also on the other side, you're walking through France. So you come
Yeah.
across these small towns and cities that you wouldn't otherwise travel to if you weren't walking the Western Front. So I got to see these cool places that, are not touristy. They're just
Mhm.
all the locals. And it's interesting because then you see the reaction of people like, well, what are you doing here? And it's like it's a welcoming, what are you doing here? Not like a what are you doing here?
Right, right. Genuine curiosity.
Yeah, totally. Which was so beautiful. It was so cool to see how the French really live outside of, Paris.
Sure. And I'm kind of trying to put myself in your shoes in a little way. And I'm thinking like you probably could have done this probably at least like a week shorter if you had just if the plan had been like, hey, I'm just going to walk from point A to point B. I'm sure you could have done it way faster. But you have to. I mean, I imagine you not just through the towns because the towns are beautiful in their own way and you want to take your time and you want to see what there is to see and encounter what you can. And then of course when you get to the battlefields, the cemeteries, you want to be respectful and kind of absorb the the reality of what actually took place. And so I'm just imagining myself like I'm going slow through this entire thing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, you have to because you could huff through it. You can just definitely huff it the whole way, but then you're missing the point of being there.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, awesome. So anything else before you reached the end of the journey that was like impactful? Anyone else that you met along the way or any other experiences that you had that was just like, wow, this really hit me?
Yeah, I was so lucky. So I had, we started talking about where we've been before I walked the Western Front. And in 2017, I had gone to Lebanon and I was out to dinner talking about, who you interact with when you go out to eat and who you get to meet. And I went out to dinner and this young woman and her friend were sitting down next to me and they were, you know, going between speaking French and Arabic. And every once in a while you'd hear them say something in English. And I just started talking to them, and then this woman invited me to basically be part of her family. They Ramadan had just started, so she's like, "No, you have to come to dinner." And or, "Let me go take you to my family's house in the mountains." And she made Lebanon for me such amazing, a deeper experience than it already was because I love Lebanon. I think it's one of the coolest places I've ever traveled to. But when I was walking the Western Front, she had happened to be in Paris at the same time. So I took a couple of days off the Western Front to go hang out with her in Paris.
Oh, that's cool. How far away or how did you get there from the west? I don't know the landscape, I guess.
So basically, like the Western Front is east of Paris. It is, it hugs the almost the border of France and Germany, or it was the border of France and Germany because Germany had Alsace-Lorraine during the war. And then so the Western Front was like 80 kilometers, maybe like 50, 60 miles. And where I took the train from was about 2 hours away. So it was just in the north of France, northwest of Paris. So
Oh,
it took me about 2 hours to get into Paris.
oh, that's not bad at all.
No, not even a little bit.
No, excellent. So you got to reunite.
Yeah, so we got to spend we she cooked dinner one night, we went out to dinner another night. It was really cool.
But that was not the first time that you've been to Paris.
No, 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 no. I've
The
been to
place that
Paris.
the place that you dreamed of.
Yeah, I still dream of it. I'm going next month.
Oh, nice. Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited.
So just to kind of, I guess, wrap this journey, and again, I know that there's so much more information in your book, right? But you go back to the trail, and how does it all finish up for you?
Yeah, so after I left Paris, I went back to Amiens and then went through the Somme, which is a huge battle during World War One. The British forces lost 20,000 men in the first day.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Bill, like
Unfathomable.
no, you can't. Like you can't and then when you read about the actual details, I read a book about Tolkien was there. So Tolkien in the first days of the Somme was there with his friends, and by the end of the Somme, he lost two of his best friends.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. If you've never seen the movie Tolkien, it's so good.
I have not, but I'll write that
Uh,
down too.
I'll send you an email of all the things that I've told you. All the movies that are just gonna make you cry.
Right. Yeah. I'm down for it. I'm good. I'm good for a good cry.
Yeah, well, everybody should be. Everybody, even if it's an ugly cry.
Absolutely.
All right, so then I got back up to the north of France and went through the border into Belgium and then found my way walking towards the sea, and it felt almost anticlimactic because you're going through different parts of France and different landscapes and different terrains, but it was the same war. And you kind of are like, how did that still happen? How did that continue to happen for so long?
Yeah. And for such a great area, like, I don't know. Yeah, I can understand that, I guess. Not truly, I'm sure, because I haven't experienced it, but yeah, because each place that you went just kind of has probably its own impact, and then just over and over again, you're going through like these highs and lows, and just emotionally, it had to impact you in some ways, like realizing and appreciating the devastation. I don't, English is not my primary language either. The devastation and the loss that was there, but then appreciating the beauty of these places that you're in, and then experiencing the loss again, and having reverence for all of that, and then experiencing the beauty again, and then it's just I can't even imagine the ups and downs and the emotional roller coaster.
Oh, every day. Bill, every day was emotional roller coaster. And you would cry, you would laugh, you would just be dumbfounded or stunned but you had the whole day to think about it and to process it, which is a good thing. Or 36 days.
Right, right. So you get to the end, and again, anticlimactic. It's I'm here. Okay, I finished this trek. Here's a really stupid question: how do you get the GPS thing back to the start?
I mean, you could just follow the way back or just reverse it. No, when I got to so like my last day, the night before I spent a night at a hotel in a Belgian city called Dixmude, which is about 15 miles from the North Sea. So I left my bag there and everything, and I knew that I'd be able to take a train or a bus back to Dixmude to take a train back to Arras, which is a beautiful city in northern France. Um, I traveled very, very light, but it was just like at that point, you know, it was like no one was around. The Western Front Way there was marked, and you just keep on walking and you're just going out on a stroll on that last day, and then you get to the North Sea, and then you think, "Oh my gosh, 20 years later, this sea was filled with U-boats and battleships for the Second World War. So what was the point?"
Yeah, it's really humbling.
Yeah. It was Bill, it was not even humbling, it was soul shattering in a good way and a bad way.
Yeah, just incredible. I don't know. I don't. It's never been something that I thought about, doing, and I don't know that it's something that I would ever do. But I do have appreciation for things like that, and it's just amazing, and I think it's really cool that you did that, and that you wrote about it and you put it out there for everyone else to experience through your eyes and through your thoughts. So
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Bill.
yeah. So I'm looking at the clock, and I'm not in any hurry, but at the same time, we should probably. I feel like we barely touched on most of the travels that you've experienced in your life. So
Well, I've written a lot of books. Everybody can read them.
that's
They can
true.
read them. That's like, shameless plug right there, Bill.
No, absolutely. I want you to plug away, plug away. So, but before, because I do have a final five questions that I always wrap my episodes with. Before we get there, if we were sitting down, we just met maybe in I don't know, another country somewhere, happen to come upon each other as fellow travelers, and we're solo traveling, and we sit down and we grab a beer, and we're sitting next to each other at the bar, and we just start talking about our travels with each other. Is there like one or two stories and experiences that you've had anywhere that we haven't talked about that you they come up in conversation? They're like those kind of like those must tells, like, oh, when I was here, I did this and it was amazing. Or some like the funniest thing that's ever happened to you in travels, or the scariest thing that's ever happened to you in travels. Is there anything like
No, I'm nosy. As much as I've been talking about myself for the last over an hour,
that?
I am so nosy. I will ask you 20 questions. I will get to the root of your soul, and I'll be like, "Tell me more." And I'll just keep on asking and just be curious. So generally I'm very good at deflecting a lot of the time. So if I meet
Nice.
somebody, I want to know who you are. I
But
want to
that's
know what
my
you're
job
giving.
in this case.
Yeah, so it's a nice balance.
Nice. So I'm gonna push. Can you? Is there any like super funny thing that happened to you anywhere in the world that stands out
Yeah,
to
you
you?
wanna
As
talk about a funny thing?
yes, I do.
Alright, so back in China,
Hmm.
I was supposed to, first teaching this in Xi'an, which is where the terracotta warriors are, and it was, like, our first meal. They had taken the teacher, like, the school that I was supposed to work at took me out with other teachers from the school, and, I'm kinda healthy, so I see, chili peppers on the plate, but they're, like, real chili peppers, they're not red pepper flakes.
Okay.
So, I eat them because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, they're vegetables."
Hmm.
And the next day, I had to run home because I thought I was gonna die.
Is that something like they eat those like they're candy, or you're really not supposed to eat those, or what's? I mean,
And they're more flavorful. They're for flavor. They're not for a lot of consumption.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
maybe you
okay.
could have 1 or whatever, but having more than 1 is just stupidity.
And yeah, and that was stupidity.
Yeah. And then another time in China, we're out to dinner, so then I go to Guilin, which is a little further away from Xi'an. And, I'm teaching, and I think, like, every Monday or every Tuesday, I would get picked up by a driver and go to school, like, go to another school a little further away, and we were out to lunch because that's what they did, and then they also, like, give you rice wine, so it's like sake, but it's Chinese rice wine, so they're expecting you to drink in the middle of the day, and then in the middle of like, in the middle of the table, they also have, like, a Bunsen burner almost.
Okay.
And so that's where you have, like, a bowl, this broth, and you get to put all the food that you wanna eat in it, like the bok choy and the tofu and the tripe and stuff like that. And then and then it's connected to a cylinder of gas that's underneath the table.
Okay.
And it got disconnected, and we all had to, like, run away from the table. So, yeah, China was a safe place.
Did you disconnect it or just happened?
No, 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 it was just something that, like,
Oh, okay.
it was literally.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeez. Well, I'm glad you're okay. No
Me
explosions
too.
at lunch, especially after drinking.
Yes, yes, and then and you I can't drink like the Chinese. It's like they just keep on like "Ganbei, ganbei," and I'm like, I can't drink this much."
Yeah, I've heard stories. I've heard stories of the Chinese drinking. Yeah.
Yeah. It's admirable, to say the very least.
Awesome. So, okay, well, this has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed this time that we've had. Is there just before I jump into the final five, I'll ask one more time. Is any other stories that you want to tell before we jump in?
No, because then I have to think about them, and there's just so many that I don't know,
Yeah.
which one is a good one to share.
Yeah. Well, they're all good. I promise you that. Okay. Well, and honestly, like this happens sometimes when we're talking about these final five questions, something will jump to your mind and go into as much detail as you'd like to. I'm here for all of it. So we'll jump in and see where we go. Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. So question number one is, and I phrase this carefully, so pay attention to the phrasing. Of
Okay.
all the places in the world that you've ever been, and you talked about food a little bit, especially just now, but of all the places in the world you've ever been, what has been the most memorable meal experience you've ever had, maybe outside of the couple that you just mentioned?
Again, China.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived in a city called Guilin, and then there was a city close to it called Yangshuo, which is this small little hippie town almost. And you go and you can have 1,000-year-old eggs, and which are like just spoiled eggs and snake blood.
Okay, I've heard of the eggs. I've never heard of snake blood
Yeah.
as
So
as something to eat.
yes, like it's just you can just eat it. I don't know how they did it, but I think I did it one night, and I'm like, yeah, I don't need to do that again.
What like is it? Is it in liquid form? Is it how is it? What's the consistency?
It's warm, which is weird because snakes are cold blooded. It just they have different preparations for it because it's a delicacy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So is it almost? Is it in like a bowl?
Yeah, but like I think that you also get like it's like I like this is probably I'm gonna have to look it up again, but like compare it to like gator tails.
Yeah. See, I don't listen. The most exotic thing I've ever eaten was guinea pig.
You've been to Bolivia, right, or Ecuador?
Peru.
Okay. Yeah, everybody talk. I heard it's
Great.
good though.
Oh, it was wonderful. I would have it again.
Oh, really? I've heard good things.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, enough about grilling you on snake blood. How was the? Did you eat the egg?
No, no, no. That thing, I was like, I do have, like, chilies aside, I do have a stomach of steel, so I'm not necessarily afraid of eating a lot of things. But there's just something about eating something that's 1,000-year-old egg that you're just like, good. I'll pass. Hard pass on that.
And listen, I've only, for the record, I've only heard of, maybe a dozen times have I heard of someone talking about actually eating one of those eggs, and none of them were pleasant experiences. So,
Oh yeah, I can
good
imagine.
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I made a good choice.
Okay, so moving on to question number two. I've never had anyone say that, so that was a good answer. Question number two is, I always say this, it's one of my favorites just because I get some really interesting responses. And some people don't have a response for this, and that's fine if that's the case. And you may have a number of places. I don't know. Let's see. Of all the places in the world that you have ever been, even if I was to come to you and say, Briana, here's a free trip, all expenses paid, go and enjoy yourself, you would say, no, thank you. I'm never going back.
St. Simon's Island, Georgia.
Okay. Again, an answer we've never had. Can you expand?
I lived there for a couple of years and it's almost like Never Never Land. People just never grow up. It's beautiful, but it's just not a place that I could imagine having a life.
Okay.
Yeah. So everywhere else I would go back, but St. Simon's Island. Also, my dad says I'm not allowed to go back. So there's that.
What's it like there? I mean, I've never heard of it.
So it's an hour south of Savannah. Have you been to Savannah at all?
No.
All right. So
No, I have. Actually, yes, I have. I've spent like an afternoon there.
okay. So Savannah's beautiful and everything, but it's just that when you're a Yankee living in the South, it doesn't really go over well.
Okay, that's fair. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll take that.
Also, maybe since not Cincinnati. No, Cincinnati. Cincinnati was a place that I was like, I've done it. I don't need to go back.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a place I've not been, but it has been recommended to me, but maybe it's more of like a let's go there for a weekend and then get out.
Yeah, and I think I was expecting it to be cooler than it was, but when I was there, it was like 100 degrees, and I wanted to go to a Reds game, but then the thought of being outside in that again, I was just, it was just the heat does something to me.
Yeah, baseball games are a lot of fun, but when it's super hot and it's just brutal, it's like, especially if there's
Yeah,
no breeze, like,
exact. And there's no beer that can cool you down.
right, absolutely, because the beer gets warm anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, well, let's flip number two, 180 degrees, and say, and I'm going to put a caveat on this. Of all the places in the world that you have been, let's say, Brianna, you only have one or two trips left in your lifetime for whatever reason. What are the one or two places in the world that you absolutely have to go back to?
Istanbul
Okay.
and Beirut.
Okay. And you had already
Yeah.
mentioned Istanbul, I believe, right? Did you mention Beirut?
Beirut. I mentioned Beirut. I mentioned Beirut, but not
It
Istanbul.
was the other way around. It was
Yeah, yeah.
So why Istanbul then?
I have never experienced a place and been so present in my entire life. It was the height of summer. It was I got there in June or the beginning of summer. And it was just so beautiful. I stayed on one side of I stayed on the Asian side, and then I would take the ferry over to the European side and just walk the streets of Istanbul, and it just felt like home. It felt like a place that my heart can grow old in.
Wow. And it's amazing because, and this is why I love doing these questions, because I don't know that anyone's really mentioned Istanbul, and I've been doing this for over a year now, and so that's incredible for that to have that sort of impact on you.
Yeah. And it was just, you see, like, they're all a bunch of gypsies in a way. So you see them dancing in the street, and Turks have a bad rap, for reasons, multiple reasons. And yet there's this vitality to them that is almost like untouchable.
I guess I will say I have had people mention Turkey as a destination, but I don't know that no one's ever pinpointed it and said Istanbul, I guess.
Oh, and then also there's like 3,000 mosques there.
Mm.
So when the call to prayer comes on, Bill, it is a showstopper. You just you're stopped dead in your tracks, and just you have no choice but to listen.
And do you like feel it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It just you can't like. I looked forward to it. I would be like, is it 5 o'clock in the morning yet? I have to hear it. Is it the beginning of the day? Is it midday? Is it the end of the day? Like I would wait for it. And no matter where I was, I would just listen, and my heart would grow still.
And listen, and I've never experienced that in person, but I encourage anyone who doesn't necessarily know what we're talking about or has an idea, but like try to find maybe a clip on YouTube or something of if somebody has. I'm sure there's definitely something out there that like just listening to and seeing what happens during that call to prayer. Very cool.
Totally.
Okay, question number 4. We're moving right along. Of all the places in the world that you have never been, and I'm going to put the same caveat on this time, if you only had one or two trips left in your lifetime for whatever reason, what are the one or two places in the world that you absolutely must get to?
Buenos Aires or Argentina as a whole. I would love to go to Argentina and go to Argentina. Why am I saying Argentina? It sounds like when you say like Canada.
It's because English is our second language.
Yeah, it's English. I don't speak English so good. Argentina, I would go to the Tierra del Fuego. I would do Patagonia. That would be a place, and Namibia. Or no, New Zealand. There are 3 places: Namibia, New Zealand, and Argentina.
I'll allow you. I'll allow you.
All right, thanks. Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
Namibia, why?
I just spoke with somebody that had come back from there, and it just you look at the photographs of the landscape and how it is a softer country, and it's so beautiful, and there's so much wildlife and so much nature. So it'd just be really cool to experience.
And New Zealand, I think, is sort of an obvious one, right? Especially if you've been to Australia.
Yeah, but New Zealand, I'd want to do the is it the Tia Oira? Like it's there's a hiking trail that you can go from the South Island to the North Island.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard of that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So that would be a dream.
I unfortunately didn't get. I just got back actually 6 weeks ago from New Zealand. I did not get to experience the South Island. If I go back,
Is your daughter in Wellington? Where is she?
yeah, she's in Wellington. Yeah.
Okay.
So good answers. Good answers. I'm so sad that we're wrapping this up, but we're on question.
We'll have to do it again in the future.
Absolutely, you'll be my second ever repeat guest. All right. So
Say
question.
that to all your guests.
No, I don't actually. I don't know if I've said that before. I've said we should have you on again, but never said that. So,
Okay.
I keep saying, that's all right. They'll all.
I do too.
So question number 5 is easy because you know the answer. What is on your docket, Briana? Where are you going?
Paris in general, or just more
What's
like in
planned
the
for the
near
rest
future?
of this year, maybe into next year? That's planned.
I really honestly, since I've written this book, I've been trying to get it off the ground. So my focus has been, I have a very big goal that I would love to see happen. And it's a destination, that is on paper and not, and it's in real life too, but it's a place that I would like to see myself. So I'm going to keep that to myself. but a place I'd love to go to the Dolomites. I would love to go, and also there's a trail. It's between Austria and Italy where you can walk the border from World War One that they fought over.
That's awesome. So it's not
Yeah.
necessarily specifically planned, but it's kind of in the hopes.
Yeah, and I was a dummy and I just bought a car too, so until I can get it off my hands, I kinda have to stay put for a little bit.
Nice.
And
But
I
you
like
did
to travel for what's that?
no, go ahead.
No, and I like to travel for longer periods of time, so, I think that my travels will just be oriented around World War One and doing research for my next book.
Excellent. But you did say you are going back to Paris.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in a couple weeks.
That's right.
Yeah, and then I'll go to Reims, which was on the Western Front, and that's where, the most beautiful cathedral is, and drink champagne, and really, what more do you want out of the world than to drink champagne?
Yeah, I would choose a different beverage, but yeah, no, that's I get it. I get it. Well, Brianna, this has been absolutely fantastic. I had a lot of fun listening to you and talking with you. Again, everyone can check out your website. Primarily, that's probably the best place to go, right? And to get information, find your books, and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, my website, they can do it there or just on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put the links in the show notes and everything. Before I hit stop, is there anything you'd like to add or say to the listeners, or anything, any words of wisdom, or like I said, just anything you'd like to add at the end here?
No, I just wanna thank you for having me on today. This has been a nice conversation. So
Yeah,
thank you very much, Bill.
I agree. Well, you're very welcome, and I thank you very much as well. So have a wonderful rest of your night. I guess it is kind of getting later, and
Yes.
we will definitely talk soon.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And there's another episode of the Where Have You Been podcast in the books. Thank you so much for listening today. It was another great guest with some great stories, as always. And I hope that you will support all of the guests by checking out the show notes and going to their web pages, seeing any socials and projects that they may have going on. And please, again, I'll ask as always to like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really does help to allow the podcast to grow and reach more people, and I appreciate you for doing that. Also, if you haven't done so, check out the website, whybpodcast.com, where you can find blog posts. If you'd like to be a guest, please register to be a guest on the site, and check out the merch page. There's some really cool stuff if you're interested in representing the pod, along with some other cool travel items and apparel that I'm working on every day as well. Join me again next week for another great guest with more incredible stories. New episodes drop every Sunday just after midnight Eastern Time. Until then, thank you for being here, and have a great day.